Hello everyone and welcome to the last game we'll be showing from the Opera Euro Rapid tournament. It's Maxime Vachier versus Temur Rajabov. This is the second game of the second match, but before we check this out, I would just like to mention that the FIDE candidates tournament is to be resumed in April this year, and as it states on the official FIDE page, FIDE has today announced that the candidates tournament in Yekaterinburg, Russia will resume on the 8th round, taking place on April 19th. So 389 days after the event was stopped midway, the chess world should finally get to know who Magnus Carlsen will face in his 5th World Championship match scheduled for Dubai in November. So there we have it, and I thought it was very fitting that here we have Maxime Vachier, who is currently leading the candidates tournament, and Temur Rajabov, who dropped out of the candidates tournament, and due to his dropping out, Maxime got in. So very interesting that the two of them are fighting it out for third place in this Opera Euro Rapid, and this game features a move that is that simply cannot be explained. So best for me to just show it to you, and then we can take it from there. So this is the second game. Temur won the first game where he had the white pieces. So Maxime opens with e4, and much like Maxime, Temur also goes for the Sicilian defense. We have c5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now d4. Striking in the center, we have captures, and now e5. This is the early advancement of the e-pawn, the so-called Loewenthal variation, somewhat different than what you're used to seeing in the knight f6, knight c3, and e5, the so-called Alaska or the Pelican or the Sveshnikov that we've seen in the World Chess Championship match between, for example, Fabi and the Magnus. So here we have the early e5, knight to b5, now going after the d6 square, and now d6 by black. We have c4, grabbing more space in the center, and Temur continues development. Just bishop to e7, we have knight to c3, and now a6, pushing this knight back. Knight to a3, the knight is now coming to c2, and then to e3, and from e3 we'll have access to d5 and f5 squares. So f5 right away, we have e captures and the bishop captures on f5. Now knight to c2, going after e3 as the bishop is now on f5. Knight to f6 and knight to e3. We have bishop back to e6 and the g3 now, preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop. We have castles and now bishop to g2. We have queen to d7 now. With this queen bishop battle, we want to play bishop to h3 and grab hold of white's light square bishop, and then it's going to be a little bit easier to attack white. So here the usual move is just castles. There are 9 games in the database where this move has been played, but in this game knight c to d5 is played by Maxime, and it is as of move 14 that we have a completely new game. So here, rook 8 to e8. Now you cannot continue with bishop to h3 because knight b6 and, well, your queen and rook would be under attack. So here first rook goes to e8, and only now we have castles and bishop to d8, not allowing this knight to be traded for bishop, and the bishop nicely controls all of these squares, so you don't have to worry about any jumps. Also very useful to know, when the bishop and knight are apart 2 squares, then the bishop nicely controls the knight, and vice versa. So here b3, preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop as well, and only now bishop to h3. Threatening to trade off white's very strong defender here. Bishop to b2, and now bishop captures on g2. We have king captures on g2, and now knight to e7. Trying to trade off this knight, well, the knights. We have knight captures on f6, rook captures, and now rook to c1. So here, after rook to c1, we have queen to c6 with check, remaneuvering the queen. Knight to d5 now blocking, and here bishop to b6. Now the idea is Temur wants to shift this bishop to d4 to trade it for white's dark square bishop. So here f4, striking in the center, and now bishop to d4. We have captures on d4, now an in-between move, knight captures on d5, threatening some very nasty discovery, so you have to capture the knight. Queen captures with check, and now you're gonna win back your bishop. So here queen f3, offering a queen trade, and now Rajabov just trades. Queen captures on f3. He was not interested in queen captures on d4, leaving the queens on the board. I imagine because he already won the first game, and he won the first match in its entirety. So I guess he just wants to keep it simple. But queen captures was very interesting because after queen captures on b7, queen d2 check. Now you cannot block with the rook because this rook is hanging. So king to g1 and now rook to h6, threatening checkmate, and once the queen stops checkmate, now you go queen e3 check, king h1, and now you capture on f4. So this is the position he could have gotten, but I guess he decided that it's not worth it risking it, because black would also be a little bit vulnerable. So he decides to just trade queens, and in the next game he's gonna have the white pieces anyway, so why rush into something? So queen captures, we have king captures on f3, and now winning back the bishop. E captures on d4, we have rook f to d1, now going after this pawn, and rook to e3 check. We have king to f2, and now rook f to e6, going for this check, and then you're gonna go after the second rank pawn. So here rook captures on d4, saying not a problem. We have rook e2 check, king f3, and captures on h2, ready to capture on a2 next. We have a4, not allowing this capture, and now h5. h5 is a great move. You might also think, but why not, for example, rook here, and after white captures this, then h5, we're threatening checkmate, looks very nice. Problem is, after rook to f1, you don't have checkmate, and you've basically just given up this pawn. So here Temur says, I'm just gonna hang on to this pawn and play h5 first. So maybe if you don't react to anything, maybe then I'm gonna try something like that. But Maxime immediately makes room for his king. We have f5 attacking the rook here, rook to e5, and now even g4. So here h captures on g4, king g3, attacking the rook, and rook to b2 now. We have rook captures on d6, and rook captures on f5. We have king captures on g4, attacking the rook, and rook b back to rook b back to f2. It might sound like a good idea to, keep this rook here to attack this pawn, but it could also be very, very dangerous. For example, if you go somewhere like rook to f7, and then let's say what white could do, let's say rook to b6, then the pawn is defended, and you haven't really accomplished much. But it's hard to say what's better here, because it's these rook endgames are always so drawish, but only there are maybe some very few positions that are like super crazy winning positions. So it's hard to say. So here rook b to f2, now just doubling up here, maybe try at least you're very safe here. You can always keep harassing the white king if nothing else, but you're still up a pawn, so Temur definitely will try something here. So here rook to rook to c8 with check, king to h7, and now rook to c4. Not allowing any checks to come this way. We have b5 offering a trade, a captures, and now rook captures with an attack on this pawn, but just king to g3, attacking the rook here, rook to f6 offering a trade, and white trades, captures, and now as this pawn is under attack, just b4. So the pawn is defended. We have a5, Temur trades off this pawn as well. We have captures, and now rook to h4 with check. And now it's a king, rook, and pawn against king and rook, and this is of course a completely drawn endgame. It's table-based draw. Basically, there's no way you can play for a win here, and both of them know this. But what happens next is pretty insane. Here we have king to g6, rook to g4 check, and now we have rook to g5, just blocking check. And now feel free to pause the video here and try to find a move that does not lose the game for white. So while I give you a couple of seconds, have at it. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not playing something like king f2, king g2, king h2, but also congratulations if you decided not to capture the rook. Capturing the rook actually loses the game. So what you have to play here is something like this: king f4, king f3, king h4, king h3. So these moves are okay, but capturing on g5 is absolutely not okay. And remarkable as it is, this is exactly what Maxime played. He allowed Temur to grab this opposition, and now it's basically it's the most basic of all endgames. You gain the opposition, you are able to win squares in front of your opponent's king, and you will be able to win this endgame. So now king to f3, Temur just played king to f5, and now you have to play something, and it doesn't matter what you play. If you go here, then the black king goes here. If you go here, the black king goes here. So Maxime played king f2, but now just king to f4, and it is well known that if you have control of these squares in front of your pawn with the king, then the game is just winning. As now white has to move, you again gain the opposition. So for those of you who are new to chess, I will show it as it's very interesting. So once the king moves, you're just gonna move your king closer. You have to reach this square, so you control all of these squares, and then you just want to march your pawn all the way through these squares. So here, king f1, king to f3. Now again, you have the opposition. The white king has to move, king e1, and now you start pushing your pawn. King f1, you push the pawn. Again, you have the opposition. King e1, now just king g2, and you have control of these three squares, and now it's just winning. King g2 check, doesn't matter what you play, check, 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 and now you will checkmate the white king easily. So of course Maxime knows this, and after king to f4, he resigned the game. But this is a very special moment for chess in general. You know, remember this position very well, and you know, show it to everyone, to your friends at the bar and the library, because it's amazing that Maxime, who is currently leading the FIDE candidates tournament and might, you know, definitely has good chances of challenging Magnus Carlsen for the title of world champion, played rook captures on g5 in this position and allowed this completely winning endgame. And these are the absolute, you know, the most basic of basics. So I have no idea how such a thing could happen. Maybe Maxime stopped caring altogether about this tournament. Maybe he's just, you know, interested in continuing the candidates tournament, and maybe that's the only thing that occupies his mind currently. But it is always interesting, and this is something that I always mention. You know, blunders are for everyone, no one is immune, and whenever you blunder something, or you have, you know, you play a brilliant game and then you ruin it, don't worry, it happens to everyone, and you know, you are not the problem. So here, if it can happen to Maxime, then I mean, it definitely can happen to everyone. I know when I was still playing over the board chess like 10 years ago, I was playing some tournament, and I played a really good game, and then I made such a mistake such as this one, and I was like, what is wrong with me? You know, should I just stop existing? I mean, it makes no sense. But yeah, it happens to everyone, so you know, bear that in mind next time you blunder, and you will blunder. You know, that's you know, the only absolute in the universe. But yeah, like I said, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The last game we'll be showing from the Opera Euro Rapid. We are continuing with what we usually do, you know, the Morphy Saga and so on. I would like to thank Mr. Hoodie Guy, Chu Chao, John Aleva, Bobby Aleva, obviously John's dog, and it's actually a contribution for Meadow. So there you have it, Meadow, you have received a contribution, and a Monero supporter for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy Saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And also, sorry about that, I forgot to mention, yeah, these are the standings of the candidates tournament, in case you forgot. So Maxime and Nepo are leading the tournament, followed by Fabiano, Grishuk, Van Kao, and Anish Giri. And then in last place with 2.5 points, Kirill Alexenko and Ding Liren, who is having the probably the worst tournament of his life, and you know, the absolute worst time to have such a tournament is the candidates tournament. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you soon.